podcasting tips and tricks. So before we get started, I wanted to go around the room and let my guests introduce themselves, their podcast, and how long they've been podcasting, or how long they've been behind the mic for some of them. So CJ, we'll start with you.
What up, everybody? CJ the Six. I'm a host of the Six and Friends podcast. I've been podcasting now, this is the end of my third season. Shout out to season 4 coming up. My podcast is everyday life through the lens of Black millennials. The topics range from literally stripping to how to invest in the stock market. So there's anything you want to hear about is probably on the podcast.
Thank you. Nikita?
Hey, so I'm Nikita Burks-Hale, and the name of my podcast is Journey Girl Magic Podcast. I also own a podcast production company that works with women of color, bringing their voices to the masses. And so I'm here, excited and ready to start talking.
Thank you. And Stephanie, we have next.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm the host of the Mocha Minutes podcast. It is a weekly topical podcast. I have been doing this. I just celebrated my 3rd birthday of my podcast in September. So my podcast, it is kind of like the Jeopardy category potpourri for the Black experience. So it ranges from current events, sports, politics. November 4th is coming. Mental health, my single life, or literally whatever else is going on that week.
Nice. And we have Derek with us as well.
Hi, my name is Derek. I've been podcasting for 12 years. I currently am the host of Single Simulcast, The Dream Team, Unburdened, Hindsight. Sin and Solace is coming back pretty soon, 20 Minutes, and Storytellers. And I also have a podcast production agency and mentoring agency. I'm the head of the Black Podcasters United group on Facebook, and I also have a catering company, Consistently Good.
Wow. Do you sleep, Derek, at all?
Actually, it's funny you asked that because I am literally on another page right now looking at Amazon jobs. So no.
Well, shout out to Amazon. And my name is Nichelle Gray. I am the founder of Your Purpose podcast, and I speak with, or I interview entrepreneurs, business leaders, or activists, and really it is to inspire someone to step out on faith and follow their dreams in any of those fields. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. So we have about 5 main topics that I wanted to cover. The first one I want to start with is hardware and software. So thinking about equipment. What are your thoughts, or what is some of the best or worst equipment that you've ever used or you purchased and realized you didn't need? Stephanie looks like she has.
My first thought when it comes to equipment is great equipment doesn't make a great podcast. So just because you have top of the line studio branded equipment doesn't mean a podcast is going to be good. You know what I'm saying? So when you start out, if you don't have access to that type of equipment, if you don't have easy access to it, there are good cost effective mics and stuff like that. I think I started my podcast with $140, $150. That's 2 mics and an audio box. So, and people like the audio quality, and it wasn't super expensive, So that'd be my first thought on it.
I started off when podcasting was a wild, wild west. And everybody was trying to keep up with. I'm the Joneses. I'm Derek Jones. So they weren't trying to keep up with me, but they were definitely trying to keep up with the Joneses in form of podcasting. And we thought that we had to have everything in order to be there because there was nobody to tell us otherwise. So I think I paid upwards of $500 for all of my podcasting equipment, and it turned out that I only needed like maybe $120 worth of it. Getting equipment it's this ain't a video game, people. Getting equipment does not up your levels in anything. You getting a microphone will not enhance your voice. You getting a mixer will not give you 2 points of knowledge. You could do this with literally a microphone and a computer. Sheesh. I did a podcast using nothing but a computer, using the microphone that was attached to the computer, like the one that's, on the top of your computer. Just lean forward and just talk deep into that thing, and it goes out. If people want to find you, they'll find you. They don't know what your equipment is, and they don't care.
Gotcha. Ladies?
Yeah. So it was very interesting. The way that I was able to start with my equipment was ironically because I had been gifted Amazon gift cards. So I literally started out not really paying for anything because someone had gifted me Amazon gift cards for, I think, Administrative Professionals Day and then also Christmas. So I think essentially when I look at the gift cards, it's maybe about 120 and 150. And that included a microphone that I no longer use. Yeah. I also have a mixing board that I have never used. And I had bought some earphones which did not work. So I have been blessed to be gifted a lot of things. So this is a very funny story, but I'm a podcast fan. So I had one of my podcast heroes in my head for guest. I got to guest on their show. Well, the mic that I no longer use, the reason I don't use it is because it stopped working. So I literally had to run to a computer store and buy the holy grail for a lot of people starting out, the Blue Snowball, and it was on sale for like $39. I literally had to go buy that microphone. It was like,
Wow.
that's literally probably the only thing I actually paid out of my own pocket was that Blue Snowball, which was $39. And this past Christmas, the mic that I'm using right now was gifted to me by my brother, who is like, I like your podcast, and I saw this, and I thought I would get you this because I like the podcast and I want to see it grow. So the other part about it is you can start out. I've been to a podcast festival where someone literally said he does a travel podcast and he uses his Apple earbuds to record, but then he has editing equipment. And when you listen to his podcast, it's kind of like, you couldn't even tell. But also, you're not focused on the sound, you're focused on what he's actually saying. So everyone who's saying, like, it really doesn't matter what your equipment is, it's kind of like, as long as people can hear you and they can hear you clearly, and there's not any loud clicks or bangs or helicopters flying overhead, they are fine because they're listening to what you're actually saying. But if you're focused on the sound, it's going to affect your quality because you're like, oh, I don't like the way this sounds. I don't like this whisper. I don't like this pop right here.
Good point. Nikita?
Yeah, so kind of go along with everyone else. Just keep it simple because the more stuff you add, the more things you have to check to make sure it's right. Otherwise, it's going to go wrong. And the more potential that it's just going to mess everything up and make it more difficult for editors to do things. So just keep it simple. I'd say think about where you're recording. If you are remote, then maybe a travel mic or just the earbuds. If you're at home, you can do a standard mic. I usually, with my clients, try to just keep it at or under $100 and send them on their merry way. And what Stephanie mentioned is more about your environment. So making sure you're not by a refrigerator, making sure you don't have screaming kids in the background. That matters more than the actual microphone. So being aware of that and listening for that, you'll be fine.
So,
I mean, but at the same time, to go off of what Nikita said, if you don't have those things like set in stone, like if your refrigerator buzzes, or if you're like me and you're scared of heights and your fire alarm is up or your smoke alarm is up at the top of a vaulted ceiling, just work with it. Like, your listeners will get used to it if you can bring content. If you bring good content, your listeners will put up with a lot. And the reason why I know that is because I had the fear of heights. and the smoke alarm that ran out of batteries and would beep. And Stephanie can attest to this because she heard my shows back in the day where you would just every 10 seconds hear a beep. It was audible. There was nothing that could be done about it, but the content was good. We tried moving into the front room for my bedroom. The beep continued. You could hear it throughout the house. There was nothing that could be done.
Yeah.
Just don't panic. Just fall in love with what you're doing and fall in love with your voice, and everybody else will too. I promise you. And then take care of the stuff when you can, because your kids are going to wild out. I know one podcaster, she's one of my faves. Her daughter is a piece of my heart. Her daughter will show up for an episode and she will show up and become a part of the show every time I talk to her mom. And you know what? It's an event every single time. So if you got a kid who gets involved in the show, just write them into the show, especially if you got a little kid, because you want those memories. Real talk.
Right.
Your podcast should be a time capsule for you. If for nobody else, it's something that you should be able to go back and listen to 10 years from now and be like, man, I forgot I said that. That was dope.
Another good thing to pick up on is that a lot of people who started from, not to be ironic, started from the bottom, now they're here. A lot of them still have bad equipment. So if you're in a group like Derek runs, there will be people saying, hey, I got this old microphone. Anybody want it? You just got to pay for the shipping. It's like, I got this, I got that. Who got this? Because one, it's kind of like people don't throw their equipment away. It's not that they get better equipment because it stopped working. Well, Stephanie did. But as everybody else, people have equipment and it's not that it doesn't work. They just want something different that works better for them. But the stuff that they have still works. So it might be someone who's like, I'm scared to commit maybe $89 for that mixer on Amazon. Oh yeah, also Fat Kid Deals on Twitter. Every once in a while you'll see a deal for like a microphone or a mixer or like me, a ring light. So it's kind of like also pay attention to that too. But there are like other podcasters who are like, hey, somebody help me, so I'm gonna help somebody else. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not that it's broken, it's just I got something different.
For me, like I have a mic and I'm hoping that you guys can hear me clearly because I forgot to move my mic closer to me. So it's like having a whole bunch of different things. I've realized that I might forget to use it. So it's like, is it even necessary? So I definitely wanted to hear you guys' feedback on just having additional equipment. Like I'll see some people with the mic clipped to their shirt. You know, I don't know if those mics work better than like.
They're hit or miss. I will tell you that. Depending on who the person is, they're like, oh no, this one is terrible. And then other people, oh, this is great. But they are hit or miss. I will tell you that.
Got you. So what recommendations, and each of you guys can give me one, if someone was looking to purchase a mic?
So my first mic, which is actually the mic I'm using right now to record, I'm trying to remember the actual, so it's the Audio Technica 100. It's I think it's like
some fans here.
Yeah, it's like $60-$70.
Any podcaster will tell you that, like, oh, definitely get that one.
Yeah, it's USB and XLR. So like right now, I'm using the USB to go straight to my computer. I used to use it with the audio box. So this one, I don't have. You can't see it. But I used to use a different one with XLR. But now it's like my multi-purpose mic because I also do I try to host like a game show, and so this mic I have like a little stand for it, easy to move around, easy to do all this good stuff. Low key, kind of durable, and I'm pretty sure there's a pop filter inside of it too. So it's like plug and play, go.
Nikita?
Yep, that's the one I recommend, either the ATR 2100 or the, if you want to be fancy but still keep it simple, the Yeti. But the Yeti is just big, so if you want your toes and you don't move when you podcast, then you can get the Yeti. But it's big and heavy, and when it falls, you hear it and everything. So those are the main two that I recommend.
Mm-hmm. So with those, definitely those are tried and true. The blues, you're going to hear the blue snow. They're like, oh, I used to use that one. I use that one. I use that one. It's really good. The one I'm using right now is the Samson G-Track Pro. I absolutely love this thing. It is just amazing. But that's also because I've been listening to myself. It's kind of like you decide that you want different equipment once you start listening to yourself. And then you're like, oh, then you'll ask advice and say, should I get a different mic? I mean, what would y'all suggest? And then especially tell people your price point. If you're like, I can budget $75 for a mic, I can budget $110, and someone's like, oh, well, then this one will fit within your budget.
Okay.
I started off with the Audio Technica. I actually had to go to a music store out here called Skip's Music to buy the microphone because back then they didn't have this stuff. Yetis weren't really the thing. So after I got that, because I thought I needed it for a mix board that I thought I needed, which is now sitting in my corner. After I got that, then I got the Blue Snowball. Which was cool. I actually gave my Blue Snowball away to an aspiring podcaster. I don't know what happened to their show, but I know that they're not doing it anymore. And then I moved to just a Blue Yeti with $15 Amazon earphones. I'm not. It's like podcasting is really like being an adult. The older you get, the less you want to impress other people. And it's like, I don't care what y'all think of me. I'm going to do a podcast. This is the Blue Yeti and the Amazon earphones is literally equivalent of me doing a podcast in my boxers. Like, I am comfortable as heck right now. Don't ask me nothing. If you judging me, judge yourself. So.
Got you. So I want to move on to.
Actually, my mom.
Huh?
Yeah, the headphones I'm using, they're actually my mom's. She just wasn't using them. I'm like, can I use those? She's like, oh, sure. And then I realized there's a microphone in there, too. So I literally can plug this into, if I wanted to do a remote podcast, I could plug this in because I tested the voice and I'm like, oh, this is really clear. This is very interesting.
Nice. So there you have it. You can either borrow some equipment and you don't have to spend very much to get really good equipment, and you don't necessarily need super expensive equipment. So I did want to move on to podcast platforms. What are some good ones? What are some that you will stay away from?
So my first podcast platform was SoundCloud. Felt like I know what it feels like to be a SoundCloud rapper now. It was like SoundCloud was cool. It's built for musicians and stuff. But then early this year, I moved to Buzzsprout, and Buzzsprout, even though I've only been on 2 hosting platforms, Buzzsprout is by far my favorite. I did try Anchor for like a month or 2, but I had a problem with the RSS feed moving from SoundCloud to Anchor, and I didn't feel like trying to fix that and re-upload everything. So I just moved it to Buzzsprout, and then Buzzsprout worked. So that's what I've been working with since. They send out weekly tips. They send out your weekly status, like how your podcast is doing overall. The tips are really helpful. They also easily integrate to have your podcast on like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, wherever. And they're really good about like helping you with like monetization and stuff like that. So that's why I like them. I'm not sponsored by them anyway.
Nikita?
So I actually was working on an article for this, for like the top 4, doing pros and cons of them. So I use Libsyn. I've used Libsyn for the longest. Between them and Buzzsprout are the top 2 that I think and I recommend. Anchor got into some hot water recently about how you can clone podcasts real quick without anybody knowing. So that's moved down the list. But I think user friendliness, just really easy, and monetization would be Buzzsprout, and then Libsyn is just what I use first. And so I'm just a person who, once I start, it's hard to get me off of something. But it also leads to everything else really easily as well. And that's what those are my top 2. So.
Okay. So I am like Nikita. I use Libsyn, and that's what I started with. So I've been thinking about, do I want to move it just from a financial standpoint? I'm like, do I want to do that? So I've been looking at Podbean, because I have a couple of friends that are on Podbean, but also Buzzsprout. So I might be reading Nikita's article to see what I want to do.
The correct answer is Buzzsprout.
Ooh. But yeah,
Derek?
Lipton is very, very easy to integrate. It was actually pretty easy.
Gotcha.
To quote a bald-headed white woman named, gosh, what was her name? I've been around the world, and I just been podcasting.
Lisa
Oh my
Stansfield?
God. Yes, I was trying to.
Sinead O'Connor. That was her name. Sorry.
No,
Lisa Stansfield.
Stansfield.
Lisa Stansfield. Sorry, Lisa Stansfield. My bad. They all look just deleted. But so I started with Blueberry off of WordPress. And I did that because I started with WordPress. Actually, I take that back. Oh my God. I started with Podbean way back. And so it was podbean.com, and I didn't know anything about anything, but their integration was really easy. Back then you had to take your RSS feed and plug it in yourself. Like you had to go to a Google feed burner and actually put it into the Google feed burner, and then it gave you another RSS feed which would go out to everyone. You had to do the legwork on your own. So I started with Podbean and didn't understand it. So then I left there and I went to WordPress and started using Blueberry. And Blueberry was a bit easier, but I didn't like their owner because he was a jerk. And so I left there and I went from Blueberry to Podomatic because that's where the Black Guy Who Tips was. And I knew that they were doing good numbers. So I was like, I can do good numbers too. But what Podomatic really was a bunch of DJs who would send you friend requests to listen to become friends of their show. So then you would hear everyone a crazy, wacky, wild Rob's DJ mix for this date. So I left there. And I moved to Libsyn, which I really liked. I liked Libsyn a lot. I had really good numbers with Libsyn, but I didn't like paying Libsyn money. So I left Libsyn and I went to Anchor. I left Libsyn and I went to Pippa because Pippa was free at that point in time. But I didn't like Pippa at all. Like Pippa just seemed like it was just janky with a really nice veneer. It seemed like the type of person who would smile at you as you walk past and then call the cops on you for having a barbecue. So then I moved to Anchor, and I've been at Anchor ever since because it's free and I can use it. I use Anchor more as a distribution point for the rest of my shows. So like if I have Anchor, it has, they find all the like Buzzsprout, it finds all the different distribution sites. But then I can also, if I go to Buzzsprout, I can link my RSS feed back to the Anchor one. And my storage is in Anchor, so Buzzsprout never goes up, so I never have to pay any money for it if they do it by the megabyte. So that's why I use Anchor, because they're free and I can link them. Like I used Libsyn for like another year after I got to Anchor until somebody snitched on me when I told them my secret because I wasn't paying anything. It never went over, and I had all 500 plus of my shows on there without it going over at any time until somebody told on me. So whoever that was, I'm gonna find you. But now I'm just it's me and Anchor back to back.
Gotcha.
I do have.
Go ahead.
I did have so one other thing that we didn't touch on, and it's kind of like hit or miss for certain people. Like I know on my podcast, I'm the editor for it. And so some people, like, well, me specifically, it's like, if you're editing your own podcast, what software do you use for that? So I know I started out with Audacity because Audacity is free and super easy to learn. But it's kind of limited. And now I use Adobe Audition, and that has been like the greatest thing ever. But it's like $30 a month or something crazy like that. So it's a little expensive, but when you first start out, Audacity's fine.
I use
So
that.
I do want to come back. I do want to come back to that because that is.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about editing. So one question before. It's okay. You can't see my notes. So.
Okay.
But yeah, me personally, I use Anchor, but That's because I really didn't know about a whole bunch of other ones. And then, so I know you guys mentioned that some of them are free, some of them are not. So that was another thing. Like I'm learning as well. I think Podbean costs to use it. So that's just another thing to keep in mind when thinking about your budget. I know it's something that Nikita touched on earlier, but you know, keeping that cost in mind when trying to choose a platform. Now we spoke a lot about audio platforms. What about video? Any of you guys use video? Do video podcasts?
I'm just now experimenting with video, so I have like 6 videos that are more or less ready. They're all uploaded to YouTube, but they're unlisted because I'm big on consistency, and I can't consistently like release videos because COVID. So like I've done 20 something episodes this season and only have 6 videos for it. So I'm pretty sure people would be like, "Yo, where's the rest of it?" So, but yeah, I just upload everything to YouTube.
Gotcha. Nikita?
Same. I'm real slack with video, so my Libsyn uploads to YouTube, and then what I do is go back. What I've started doing and offering is audiograms, and so that it makes it just look prettier or nicer, where it's not just your show art. You can add different things and have it fade in and fade out. So I've been doing more of that for others. I should probably do it for myself, but it's a time thing. But as far as videos, and we'll probably get into software in a bit, but YouTube is the main thing, and I use Headliner to make those things.
Audiogram. I've heard of that. I don't know anything about that. So you guys.
It's like if a podcast and a slideshow had a baby, you'd have an audiogram, essentially.
That was easy.
That's how I like to think about it.
Definitely.
Headliner is now, it's very interesting to watch the evolution of Headliner because that's where I get my audiograms. It started on the computer, it was just desktop, then they added the app, and then they added automation. So it's very, very interesting to watch the evolution of it. So that's what I use to promote my podcast on Instagram. You can use the videos anywhere. You can use, like, now they have the integration for TikTok because they go by length. So you can create videos for your IG story, for your main IG feed. You can also do it for Facebook, for Twitter, and for TikTok. So they have different lengths. And if you do an automation, what it can do, the Headliner does now have a premium service where you get an audiogram every day. Or if you're still using the free one, which is what I was doing until I had a hiccup on Headliner and they gave me a month for free. Where you can do, basically, if you do the free one, you get an automation every time you put out a new episode. So it's kind of like it's going by like the storage space. So if you only do a weekly, if you do a weekly show, this is fine. If you do a bi-weekly show, it's totally fine. But if you're someone who does it every day, you may end up having to purchase the premium one because you're doing an episode every day.
Got you. And Derek, how about you?
Yeah. I mean, I miss Libsyn. That was one of the best things about Libsyn was it would put out a podcast. It would put your podcast directly to YouTube for you. I'm quite certain, I'm 199,000% certain that I could figure out how to get Anchor to do it as well. I don't want to. Like CJ said, at this point, it's kind of about consistency. And the next time that I do a video podcast, it's not going to be about the same thing. I have so many ideas in my head that it will be something completely different. So when I figure out what I actually want to do, even if it's me playing video games and talking with somebody and it's like comedians in cars drinking coffee, and it's just me and a friend playing video games online and talking shit about, ooh. Delete that footage.
on that note, I want to go around the room. On that note, I want to go around the room, and I want you guys to recommend one software that you either really like, are currently using, or would or have used before. So and it can be an audiogram or whatever it is.
So software to do what with?
Make your podcast.
Uh,
Like for instance, I use StreamYard. That's the
Mm.
I don't well, it's through the website, so I don't even know if that's considered a software, but I use StreamYard because when I save it, I have the video and I have like the audio already separated, so I can download them both without having to like strip the audio to put that on Anchor. And then I like the additional features that StreamYard uses. So
uh, so yeah, I would probably have to say Audition. For video specifically, I use Resolve, but again, not super consistent with it. But Audition is I really like it because you have different like presets. So when I'm recording with side technical thing, when you record audio, it records at 44, 100 hertz. And when you record video, it records at 48,000 hertz. If I record my mic, but then my camera's recording and they're not together, then my audio will be at 44, 100, video will be at 4800, and then you have a thing called audio lag. I think it's called. But it's like towards the end of the video, you'll see that you'll hear something, but then like the video will be like a couple seconds behind it. So anyway, so I can set different profiles and stuff. So like if I'm recording with the cameras, I can set it to record at 48. If I'm just recording audio, I can do 44.1. They have like presets where it's like I already have my intro and everything else already set up. So then the audio I just put the audio in and it's good. And the biggest drawback to Audacity is the fact that it's destructive audio editing. And basically what that means is you record your audio and whatever edits you make, once you save it, that it permanently changes that file. But with Audition, it's non-destructive editing. So you make edits, you move stuff around, and now you basically have a new file. The old file is still intact with all the stuff. You have the new file that has like your crisp and recorded audio. So I have a lot of bloopers that have been lost over the years because I didn't save them off.
Gotcha.
And that's not a problem anymore.
Nikita?
So I'll do one that we haven't talked about, and this is from my producer editor hat. It's called Descript. And so what it is, it's a software where you can record straight into it if you want for your podcast. You can edit right into it. What I use it for is you can also remove filler words, all of them at one time, and you can cut long pauses all at one time. So there's a free version, and then there's a paid, and then there's premium. So I use the free version for the longest, but some of my clients, I'll upload their podcast, and then I'll say remove filler words, and there's 183 filler words in a 60-minute edit. And instead of me spending an hour and a half, 2 hours listening for all of those ums and likes and so you knows, it automatically removes those. So it's a lifesaver. And then if there's long pauses, again, it takes all of those out. So that takes me 5 minutes as opposed to 2.5 hours. So Descript is my best friend. I use it every single time that I edit, and I recommend it. So,
Stephanie?
I had to make a note. Descript. Let me remember that. So I think my tip would be Zoom. And because of COVID now, everybody knows what Zoom is. And so it used to be like your little secret, and now everybody knows. It's like, oh, great, everybody knows now. Fun's over, y'all. But I like Zoom as opposed to Skype. So Skype, for people who had remote podcasts, that was like the way to record. That would be where to have a phone call that you're not paying Zoom an amount for. But then you had to rely on different Skype recorders, and all of them were not reliable. So my issue with them was that if there was an update to the Skype recorder, yeah, it wouldn't necessarily pop up all the time, and then it would be on and it didn't record. You're like, oh, you have an update. You're like, oh, it would be nice if I knew this before I started recording. So that always was a problem. And then I think maybe last year sometime, Skype added a recording feature into it. The only thing about that is it's not a bad feature. It's just that with the different Skype recorders, you could split the tracks between people that were talking, which is fine unless you have like 3 or 4 people on the Skype call. 3 people, if it's 4 of you, count yourself. 3 people on one track, you on the other track. So if someone has a barking dog in the background or eating cereal, because that's happened, yeah, you can't edit that out, especially if somebody else is talking. So it became like a, oh my goodness, this is just annoying. So the good thing about Zoom is that they also split the tracks, but they also have a feature in, if you choose the Zoom recording, it will record each person in the call separately. But it also can do it if everyone's audio is crisp, you can just use the single file which has everybody's audio on it. However, if it's one person that sounds a little wonky, you can get all 4 tracks together. The only caveat to that is it'll start recording when everybody starts talking. So if you have someone who joined like 20 minutes in, you have to make sure it measures up to the start of the recording. But still Zoom, I enjoy it. You can put it in the cloud, just into your computer automatically, whatever you want to do.
Gotcha. Derek?
So Zoom's great based on the fact that you can it's easier to play audio without having to have a mixing board and all that kind of stuff. You could just go to Zoom and select share screen and go to advanced, and then you can select that your computer sounds are heard by everybody. And just like that, you're playing sound bites for everybody that's going to be picked up by Zoom, which makes things much easier than it was with Skype when you had to hold phones up to the microphone and all the other kind of janky stuff. I really do. Skype, rest in peace. Y'all had a chance, but y'all just really let yourselves go, and Zoom walked right past you. But as far as editing, I've always stuck with the free editing. But Lord, I would be remiss if I didn't say I didn't miss GarageBand, because GarageBand is such a spectacular editing platform. It's such a spectacular editing system. And the ease of it was just, sublime. Like once you figured it out, and it didn't take long to figure it out as well, at all, rather, the things you could do with it were absolutely limitless.
So really quickly, is that an app that's still in existence?
It's in existence, but it's exclusively for the Mac. You can't get it if you have a PC, and there's no clones for it for the PC. I've gone looking for it.
Okay, cool. All right. The last thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to editing is, and you guys touched on it a little bit, was the difference between self-editing and outsourcing. So what's your preference on one or the other?
So I'm very, very picky, right? I like my podcast to sound a very specific way. That's why I edit it. And also, I mean, it's a lot of different things to it, because I could pay someone to edit it and then kind of teach them how I want it to sound, and then we could work from there. But I more or less have the time to do it myself. So at this point, hour-long episode takes me about 2.5 hours to edit. So I'm pretty efficient at it myself. And I release bi-weekly, so I have like 3 or 4 days to do it. So for me, I self-edit right now because I know how I want my podcast to sound, and I don't have the money to pay an editor. So
Nikita, I know that you do both. So
right.
What's your take on just what people should keep in mind when they are outsourcing to someone like your company, or if they're doing it themselves?
So I would say, first off, if the reason why you have not launched a podcast is because you're afraid to edit, you need to outsource. You need to find someone that can work with you. So if that's a barrier and that's stopping you from letting your voice be heard, then you need to find someone to help you with it. Because there are people who are affordable. There are people, I provide scholarships. There are ways to make it happen. Everyone doesn't charge $1,000 for editing. but editing is an investment. So that's the first thing I say. For me, it's not always about making money. My role and my purpose is removing noise so that your voice can be heard as clear as possible. When I edit, I still leave some ums. I still leave some ands because it's about preserving the authenticity of the conversation. It's not trying to make it sound perfect. At least that's the way that I do, and a lot of people don't. But that's the way that I do, and that's the way the people I work with talk. So why am I taking it out? Because if you take it out, it's not them. Off my soapbox. So that's what I would say. Just some quick tips is, again, if it's stopping you, then outsource. Also know that it's going to take some time. So like CJ was saying, me as a professional editor, it still takes me for an hour episode, about 2 hours and half an hour, 2.5 hours. So it does take time, and it's something that you do want to set aside time for. And if you feel like you can't do that, then again, maybe do bi-weekly episodes. So you give yourself that time and that space, or hire someone to do it. But if you've got that time and you've got that creative ear to listen and you think it's fun, there are plenty of starter tips about how to get into it. So,
Stephanie?
Oh, this is going to be fun because this is so different. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. When it comes, I'm like CJ. I'm very particular. I don't want. It's interesting. My podcast is a conversation. Most podcasts are, except if it's like Sin and Solace, which is not a conversation. So for me, I like to keep like the light in, and that's because it's just how the conversation flows. But it's also not just my podcast, but podcasts I listen to. So a lot of them, it's like if I can listen to people who are bigger platforms, just going, oh yeah, it's like this is fine. That barking in the background is fine. This is fine. This is fine. They're not over editing it. I'm like, I'm not going to over edit it. I have a buddy of mine that I podcast with. She does her podcast. I do my podcast, and she's like, I'm not editing out anything. All of this is staying in. I just want to let you know. And it's always hilarious. So whenever she gets on my podcast, I go, I'm not editing anything out. I just want to let you know it's going to stay. It's staying here. And people who listen to my podcast laugh. They're like, I'm so glad y'all left that in. I'm like, She's like, it's always funny when you say, I'm not editing nothing. I'm like, nope, we're not editing this out. The only time because most of the time for editing, I'm just editing for sound, not necessarily content. But when I'm recording, if I think a part of the conversation is, at least to me, problematic, it's not going on my platform. And I've seen, and all of us have seen, how bigger podcasts leave problematic stuff in. And then when people say, this is problematic, how did it get there? I mean, who put this mustard on my plate? What happened? It's your platform. So then it's like, well, the editor. I'm like, wait, now you're blaming the editor? I'm like, unless you're asking the editor to edit for quality and content as opposed to ums and pops, then no, it's not the editor. So then you should like make a note, like, okay, so minute 48, let me listen to this again, because it probably isn't going to sound the way I think it sounds. And So it's kind of
That's
like
a good question.
Sorry,
I want to come back to, and Nikita, I'm going to, after Derek, I want to come back to you because there was something Stephanie just said that I didn't even think about when it comes to editing. But Stephanie, I'll let you finish, and then Derek. But yeah, I got to make sure I make a note about that because I really didn't even think about that.
Because I'm glad you brought it back up, because you actually can give notes to editors and say, hey, at minute 49 up until minute 53, cut that part out. But if you don't tell them that, they're like, well, you didn't tell me to cut it out.
Oh.
So I guess you thought it was okay.
Gotcha. Derek.
So, when I edit my shows, it depends on what show I'm doing. Like I said, I have 7 of them. So if one of my shows is, 8 of them. One of my shows is called 20 Minutes. It's a 20-minute long podcast. I tell you at 20 minutes, Joe, it's been good talking to you. It's an interview show, but at the end of that 20 minutes, I got to cut you off. But the entire show has to fit within a 20-minute frame. Opening, words, closing, and the ending song is Seal doing a Fly Like an Eagle. The part where he says, "Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping." And then I have my thing where it says, "This is single simulcast." If you don't know by now, then you're slipping. All of that equals out to about 49 seconds. I have to keep that in mind when I'm doing the rest of this show. The dream team with my boys, it's just us talking until I get tired of talking to them. And we usually just cut it off like mid-sentence on somebody. Like, it'll be like, yo, we're done. Somebody will get a joke out. That'll be something funny. We just end it right there. We keep going. Sin and Solace is an audio drama. There was a lot of editing that went into that. So I've had different types of editing for myself. When I'm working for a client, I'm not so much editing their stuff as I'm teaching them how to edit. Like, your podcasting livelihood shouldn't be on my shoulders. I should be able to die and you could still teach 20 people how to podcast. Because honestly, I've always felt like podcasting shouldn't be a big secret. It shouldn't be a clique. It shouldn't be something that's inclusive. Everybody should be able to do this if you want to be able to do it. So I try and teach all avenues. And like you said, it shouldn't cost $1,000. I charge $25. The only reason why I charge $25 for it is because my wife literally won't let me do it for free. I have to charge something so then I can get away with actually telling folks how to do stuff. But there's a freedom in editing that everybody should pick up, because when you're the one editing your show, you can't blame anybody for your mistakes. Just like you can't blame no one else can take credit for your successes. And CJ, I don't know what your show is like, but I'm sure that you being a perfectionist, you've had those moments where you have spent 45 minutes looking for the right soundbite to put into the right spot the last 6 seconds that nobody's going to notice but you. But you know it's there, and you know you put it in exactly the right spot so it goes and stops at exactly the right word, and you're so proud of yourself. That's what I want everybody to feel. Nikita, I'm sure that the editing that you do is like above and beyond anything that I could even fathom, and I would love to just sit there and learn from you, because I don't want people to be afraid of any part of podcasting, and that includes to a large extent editing. So yeah,
that's a perfect segue back to Nikita. So even thinking about the specifics, how do you go about, I guess, setting the boundaries when people hand you their podcast? Like, they just tell you everything that they want done, or is there like a certain checklist that you have to go through? Because I don't use an editor, so all of these things are new to me.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing I tell my client is, you're not giving me anything. We're doing this together. Like, this is a partnership. We're on this journey together. So you're not just dropping it off and saying, make it sound pretty. If so, then I have a couple of editors that I can recommend you to, but that's not what I'm about. What I usually coach clients are, one, you need to figure out what you want. 2, you need to verbalize that. 3, I'm going to tell you what I also want and what I also do. And then we'll come to kind of an agreement understanding. So with all of my packages, I include what I call podcast coaching. So if I notice that you are hitting the table every time, or that there's this one sound or these that seem to frustrate you, we're going to have a conversation with it. I have monthly calls with all of my clients, because I want you to get better as a podcaster. Even though I'm an editor, my role is to make you the best podcaster you can be. So that editing is easy for both of us. So that if you ever want to take it on, you're more than welcome. That you see eventually that it's easy enough that you can do it yourself, or that you feel confident and that you aren't giving this to me because it sounds horrible and I need to make it better. If that's the case, then we need to have a conversation beforehand about how to make it better before you even hand it to me. Nice. Because you need to put out quality work for yourself first, and not BS work that you want somebody to make pretty, or BS stuff that now other people are going to make sound pretty for you. That's what's wrong in the world today, and wrong with our politics and all that good stuff. But so that's the way that I come at it. A lot of editors don't. A lot of those big name editors who charge $200 per episode. So I would say, if you are outsourcing, Find someone that is on your same level. If you are wanting just to give it to that person, find somebody that does that. I'm not that person. I want you to grow. I want you to know that you keep hitting that table. And I know it's frustrating for you, and it's frustrating for me. So stop hitting that table so that can be removed and we can go concentrate on other things. Or I think Stephanie mentioned it, quality. So am I just editing pops and ums, or am I listening to actual content and replacing it and putting it in other ways? So it's two different scale projects. So having a conversation and being clear about that. Because it's not just a one and done. It's a conversation that continues with each episode. We talk, it's just hey, I've uploaded my episode, I listened to it. So what do you want with this one? This is a real personal one. I'd like for you to leave it raw. Okay, then I'll just focus on the sound. This one is, we're just joking and having fun, so I want you to take out some of the ums and make sure the sound sounds good. This is a professional one that I'm using for a possible client, so I want you to make it sound polished. It's a conversation. It should change with each time. Because you're a person and you change with each time you record.
So, last question about this, because I do want to move on. But I first of all, I want to just, to you and Derek both, just educating people on how to do this themselves. Even though, that's kind of what you do with your business, I think is really dope. So, hats off to that, because there are people like me that I might not even know what to listen for. I'm so busy listening to just the words that I may not even hear the proverbial, what was it, your fire alarm?
Smoke alarm.
I might not even,
That little beat.
might not even be listening for that, because I'm so, I'm so focused on the word. So all of these are really great tips. The question that I wanted to ask you guys, and it's simple yes or no, but if I was a client, are you able to, if I said, can I hear a sample of what you've done? And basically it would be somebody else's podcast. Is that like, do you guys have permission to share other people's work, or how does that work with, well, here's a sample or clip of what I've done?
So what I do on my page, I have a list of all my clients, and when you click on their picture, it links straight to their podcast. So you're just listening to their straight up episode. That's the easiest way, because you do have to get permission. If you were trying to do a raw edit and then showing the before and after, you would have to get permission. So I just link their episode because it gives them exposure. You're exposing yourself to new podcasts, listening to new things, and that's the easiest way that I found.
Nice. Derek?
So here's how it works for me. Like I said, I only do this because I started First Level Boss because I knew I was really good at it, and I wanted to teach somebody something on top of, what I knew. I have a healthy respect / fear of death, and I'm pretty sure it's going to happen soon, and I want somebody to know what I know before I go. So I don't have a website. I have a Facebook page. If you go to my Facebook page and you message me and you ask me, hey, can I hear clips? I'm going to say, which show do you want to hear it from? I have 8 of them. I have 12 years. What is it? 2020? Yeah, 12 years of doing it. Like, which show do you want to hear? Do you want to hear how I sounded on my very first episode where I was singing and making up raps and skits and all that kind of stuff? Or do you want to hear the latest episode where we did Unburdened? That's the show that I forgot. The show about mental health, Unburdened, where we were crying about the burdens that are weighing us down in the world as Black men. Like, what do you want to hear? What is your format? What's your style that you want to reach? And then we can augment what you want to do. I don't want to treat you, and this shouldn't sound like a pitch, because I don't want to pitch myself out to anybody, but I don't want you to sound like anybody else. I want you to sound comfortable to yourself. That's like J. Cole walking into the studio one day and telling his producer, yo, give me a Kendrick beat. Well, even if I give you a Kendrick beat, you're still going to sound like J. Cole rapping over a Kendrick beat. So why not just find a J. Cole beat and be the best J. Cole you can be? I don't know. I can't even explain it. I just want people to enjoy it. If they come to me 3 times and then they're like, I got it and I'm good, and they go out and they do their podcast, I'm happy with that, because that means that they are confident in what they're doing and they found what they want to do. If they want to rock with me for like 3 years just because they like the conversation, go for it. Either way it goes, you're going to love your podcast when it's all said and done.
Cool.
I guarantee it. To quote the Men's Warehouse, you're going to love your outfit. But And I feel bad saying this because I feel like, honestly, me personally, if I were to say this, and I'm gonna say it out loud right here, Black women, women of color, please go to Nikita. Please go to Nikita. I'm not even joking. I'm not lying. We need to do whatever we can to support Black women anyway. Go to a Black woman who's going to care about your art, who's going to make sure that you sound the best, who's going to go out on the limb for you. I'll be in the Black Podcast United cheering both of y'all on, but let's support Black women in this situation. So go to Nikita. Now, ashy ass Black men, I got your back.
Got you. Well, all right. So that is the first segment. I do want to move on to the next segment called The Show Must Go On. All right, guys. Okay, we're back. We're back. So next topic is Stephanie. Don't laugh at me. I'm trying to be professional.
Sorry.
So next topic is The Show Must Go On. So let's talk about episode etiquette. So go ahead, CJ.
Oh, am I starting already?
Do you need to go back to the bathroom?
I thought you were about to say more.
No, I was actually, because that was that was one of the topics that you came up with. So I was gonna pass the ball to you. So
okay, yeah. So there's etiquette to recording podcast episodes. Like, one, use the bathroom before the episode starts.
Yeah, CJ.
Relax. But whenever I'm recording an episode, I go over like a list of things with the guests. Like, one of the biggest things, and it kind of ties back to editing, is whenever we're having our conversation, whatever, and I tell people, don't try to force a sentence out. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, when you get to a point where you like studying over your words and all that good stuff. I'm like, yo, just take a break, just take a deep breath, and then start from the beginning. Because me as the editor, it's way easier for me to edit you going, and then come back and say it. It's way easier to edit that versus you stuttering or whatever. I mean, sometimes I'll leave it in because it's just like, fuck it, like it's there. I don't care. So yeah, that's one of the big things. Another thing with me that I started doing recently is kind of going over the gist of what the episode is about. So I know some people have like conversation podcasts and that's not necessary for them. It's just like, we're just gonna turn the mics on and talk. But for me, I have like kind of specific topics that I do. And when I bring the guest on, I want to make sure like these are the type of questions I want to ask. These are things we want to go over. And so that way they're at least somewhat prepared, even though I still ask like off the wall questions because that's just what I do. Yeah. I feel like there's something else I'm missing, but I can't remember right now.
all right. So we'll come back. We'll come back to you. Just so y'all know, if y'all ever get on CJ's show, he's gonna ask you some off the wall stuff. So be prepared. Nikki.
Super off the wall. Like, let me stop.
So I'll give 3 and then a pet peeve. So 1 is prep your guests. So that just means however you do that, meaning letting them know what the show is about, letting them kind of know what they're going to be talking about, just preparing them. 2 would be when they're talking, like when it's time for it, shut up and listen. So this isn't a time for you to highlight yourself more and talk more and boost yourself and have them boost your head up. It's a time for you to just listen because they're on your show. It's the way I go at it. And then 3 at the end, I say follow up. So let them know when the show is going live. I like to send verbiage to my guests so I know exactly, not to say so I know exactly what they're going to say, but it's a lot easier when I receive like, hey, this is what I'd like you to post because I don't have to think about what I'm going to post. And they give me a show graphic or something to go with it. And then 1 pet peeve I have is just because I was a guest on your show doesn't mean I'm automatically going to subscribe to your newsletter. So I shouldn't automatically start receiving your newsletter every week. That's something that I've started seeing. And it at least ask me, at least give me a checkbox. Don't just start, now I'm a part of your list because I didn't ask for that. You asked me to be on the show sometimes. So that's my 3 and my pet peeve.
Stephanie, you gonna stop laughing long enough to
Woo, she's shaking the table. So I am, even though my podcast is a conversation, it's a mix between that and also what CJ does, because I actually got this tip. He didn't necessarily give me this tip, but I just was following his example, and that is Derek, is that he does show notes and he uses Google Docs. It is a live document, so one, I can add things to that document. So I give people an outline of this is what we're going to talk about. So what I've gotten from my guests has been like, oh my God, we're going to talk about this week. Great, because I can't talk about this anywhere other than here. So show notes, one, helps my guests be prepared, but also helps keep me on track because I can get tangential. And so I want to stay on track as much as possible, but still give the room for tangents, because sometimes that just happens. You're talking about one thing and something sparks your ear and you want to keep talking about it. My pet peeve about guests is that there are some guests who don't necessarily want to podcast with you. They just want to promote their book or their movie or their blog or them going to dinner next week. Literally, that's what they want to do. That they don't necessarily like your show. They just go, hey, you have a show, and I have something I want to promote, so I'm just going to go here. And you go, so, hi, Richard Spencer. I don't think the Mocha Men's podcast is for you. And also, you can't come here, and also leave me alone. So it's kind of like, if you get guests who are saying, hey, I love your podcast, would love to collab with you, like that is different than someone saying, I have a book that's coming out in December and I'm trying to get on every podcast I see. They're like ripping through the podcast group like, the Headless Horseman ripping through the countryside like, hey, you got a podcast? When's your episode? Let me be on it for, what do you, I am doing this book about, how the black man is the most oppressed group in America, and y'all don't love us enough. And let me tell you about you black women, and I don't know why you love these white dudes. I'm like, so again, the Mocha Men's podcast is not for you. I know it is for you, and it has 7 circles, and that's where you should be. So you should podcast from there.
Highly specific.
Very.
Derek will ask you.
Also give people rules for. I'm sorry. Give people rules for your show, because some people, they may be like, oh, can I curse on the show? Can I not curse on the show? Or you may have a guest who's like, I don't like really cursing, and even though it is your show, you should still be a little bit respectful of your guests. Like, hey, let me not throw too many N's around, too many B's, too many F-bombs, because it might not come back, and you might just enjoy talking to them. I'm sorry. That's it.
Well, when I first started, I was using Google Forms to make a form that gets sent out to my listener or to the guests. Like, what do they want me to call them? Is there something that they want to discuss? Is there a song that they want to play? Because I used to do my show more like a radio show where there was music that got played between each segment. Do they have time to stick around and do a bumper or a show break for me? Do they want to see the questions that I'm going to ask? Do they have anything that they want to discuss, like news-wise or something like that? And I would send that out to everybody. And then I kept having the same guests because I like comfort. I'm not doing this to try and let a big name come on my show and just make their name bigger. Like, there's people who will come on your show and will have a great time, and then you're like, okay, all I ask is that you share the link on Facebook and on Twitter, and they're like, how dare you ask me to do something like that? So depending on what the show is, it depends on how I approach the guests and the notes that I give them. With Sin and Solace, I stood on their back like an army sergeant. Like, I need you to say this with this intonation. I need you to do this with this sort of inflection. You didn't say that right. Why are you doing it like that? Why are you stuttering? Why can't you read? Oh, yeah, right. You're 6. Sorry. My son was on the show. But everything else, I want them to be as comfortable with me as I am with them, because I always look at podcasting, and I realized that this made me different than a lot of people way back when. But I looked at podcasting as a gateway to a friendship. I was always looking for friends through podcasting. I was looking for connection and community. And a lot of people don't get that or give that anymore. So I stopped looking for it and looked for it and just grasped onto the people that I already had and built a community out of that.
So I guess that'll segue into, how do you guys develop content for your shows?
So the content you develop depends on what you want your podcast to be. And that's pretty much the easiest way to put it. Like, mine is, everyday life through the lens of Black millennials. And a lot of the episodes, I'm either trying to give you tips and tricks on how to do things that seem like out of your reach, like investing in the stock market or buying a house, you know what I'm saying? Give you tips on that. Or I'm trying to like humanize people. So I had, over the summer, I had a Black trans woman on an episode, and I do have a couple of friends that are like transphobic, and I even had to check my mom recently, you know what I'm saying? And so, but having that conversation with her allowed me to be more knowledgeable about how to like talk to other people about it. And I really appreciated the conversation myself, because now like I understand trans lives matter and like all that good stuff, but like you can say it, but until you sit down and have a conversation with somebody, like you don't really understand like what you're saying. Yeah. And so now like that conversation exists, in the atmosphere for anybody else to listen to. And so the only reason I picked like that episode or like that topic is because I want to bring like, it's kind of hard. It's like, I want to look at it like every day, but like Black people are so different, and there's so many different like parts of us. Like I want to share like a bunch of stories, and at the same time, like I want people to learn from whatever you're listening to. So you're gonna learn something on this podcast, whether it be about somebody or like something you can do for yourself. You're gonna learn something. So that's how I end up picking my topics.
So for you, developing content, it's almost reactive to what's going on.
Not even. I don't know who else uses Google Keep, but I have a Google Keep of just like topics. So like sometimes I'll be in the shower and be like, you know what? Actually, one of my topics was about like how to get a job. That topic came about because one of my friends works in HR, and we just started having a conversation one day, and then he mentioned that he works in HR and he's doing all this other good stuff. And then I mentioned that I was trying to look for a new job, and he gave me a bunch of tips and stuff. So I'm like, yo, why am I leaving this here though? Let's put this on the podcast. Like, let everybody else hear this. So it's just like things that I think we should talk about, things that like, or conversations I have with people that's like, oh, that'd be good to share with other people. That's generally how like my topics come about.
Okay. Nikita?
So I would say for me, a lot of my content and also what I teach is I go inside first. So because my podcast starts and ends with me. So me personally, I need to check in with myself. So how am I doing? What do I want to talk about? What is interesting to me? What do I need? And then look around to those in my community. So I ask oftentimes, like, how are y'all doing? What do you need? What do you want to hear about? And they let me know. And then I take that. Sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I got that. Or I'm not there yet. Like, I've done a couple episodes about like what's going on in the world today, but I'm an empath. And so I'm taking it all in. I can't podcast about that. And that's just because I know who I am as a person. So I would say your content needs to reflect who you are. And same thing, as CJ was saying, I have a dump list. Anytime I think of a topic, I write it down. So I have 60, 70 topics. And then when I'm feeling productive and I want to feel like I did something for the day, I'll go and start trying to create themes on these topics. I'm like, oh, these four go together. Let's put this on for October. Let's put this on for November. 7 times out of 10, I get to October and I'm like, I don't want to talk about that right now. But at least it's organized that when I do, some of that work is done. And so that you're at least planning and attempting to create content. But I always say go in first, because you need to be able to talk about it. If it's not something you're interested in, it's going to show.
Got you.
So.
Definitely.
So mine is interesting because I find my content evolving a little bit, but I have to say that I utilize the Google Docs because it's a live document. I don't have to resave and keep saving. I can just add things. Uh, but my content is something that if I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to do a little bit of research. I'm not just going to take a tweet and say, did y'all see that tweet? I will do some Google searching. So a lot of times I might have to get Google Keep, but what I do is on Facebook, you know how you can save stories? I save tabs and then I save them. I have my own little folder for just podcast articles and then I look and see what I saved. And I also edit down because sometimes it's like there's a lot going on, but you're like, yeah, I don't have 6 hours for a conversation about what Drake did. That I'm sorry. He is for the streets, y'all. I'm sorry.
Got
He's
you.
for the streets. I'm sorry. I'm so mean. But he is. But I'm glad CJ was talking about this discussion because I did last summer. It was around the time where it was a very big thing that we noticed, and I'm an empath as well, where you're seeing that Black trans women were not safe. And I had 2 other Black women. We were on the show. We were just talking about current events, and one of the current events was talking about 3 Black trans women who were killed. And the conversation was around, man, we as Black women, we feed into this transphobia, and we need to talk about it. And I was like, I'm so glad because it's been my thought. So my conversation series was about transphobia in the Black community as a whole, not just the Black men that kill the trans Black women, but how do straight Black women, cis straight Black women, factor in? How do cis queer women factor in? How do straight Black men fall in? How do queer Black men fall in? And I had literally reached out to other podcasters that I knew and said, hey, you want to come on and talk about this? They're like, absolutely. I had a trans activist who literally, she gets paid to speak. And I asked her to do it. She said, of course. And it was some of the best conversations ever, especially from her perspective, because she's an activist and she's an educator. But sometimes and it's around the time, and this is not to bash the Breakfast Club, that's where I do it on my show. Not here. For content, you have to craft your content. It has to be something that you want to talk about. You can't just let me just talk about Donald Trump because everybody else is talking about it. It's like, but what if you don't want to talk about it because your blood pressure is going to rise or you're going to cry on the mic? Crying on the mic is fine because that means you're human and this is your content. Sometimes it's just your story. It's okay for you to cry. But something that's always going to anger you, you maybe should not have a white supremacist on your show, Nick Cannon. See, nope, you go away. But yeah. It's definitely craft content that you want to talk about and also something you feel comfortable because also people shouldn't write you emails all day long saying how wrong you sound because you're just talking and not fact checking. It's that's just, no, that's not good.
Okay. I did see, Derek, I did see your message that you have to leave. So thank you so much for your time. And we'll make sure that we get all your great stories included in the podcast. So I know
Thanks
you have to go.
Yeah, I have approximately 3 minutes. So the way that I go about choosing what topics we're going to discuss depends on the show we're going to do. With hindsight, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I wanted to talk about a certain thing. With each of my shows, I know without a shadow of a doubt what I want to do when I start doing it. With the Dream Team, I wanted to have fun with my 2 best friends and just laugh and do comedian shit. I wanted to do ratchet shit with my friends. With Single Simulcast, I wanted to have fun by myself. And then when I got depressed and I couldn't walk alone anymore, I got a co-host, and now she and I do it together. With Sin and Solace, I wanted to write a dramatic serial about an assassin and his best friend, and I wanted to run it from head to toe. I wanted to edit it, produce it, write it, the whole 9 yards. I wanted to be the lead in it, and I was, and I did that. With 20 Minutes, there were things that I wanted to ask people. I once wanted to ask a white person what it was like to be a Tea Party member. I'll never do that again, but I don't want to listen to people talk for too long, so I did it for exactly 20 minutes. For Unburdened, I was depressed to the point where I was looking for ways to commit suicide. I was cutting myself damn near once a week. So I was talking with two of my friends and I was like, we should make this a show. And we started talking openly and honestly about what Black men go through in mental health and destroying transphobia, misogyny, and deep-seated issues that we learned as a youth. And it always changes. Like, some of my shows are as constant as the rain, and single simulcast one day can be Stephanie coming on to talk about thirst trap things, and the next week, like today, we talked about politics for a good 2 hours. It really depends on where the wind blows, but because I have 8 different shows, I'm able to compartmentalize what I want to talk about into these 8 separate shows. Not everybody has that gift. So basically, for me, what I would say is, if you are like me and you can't sit still and you have literally 95 different podcast ideas going through your head and you have literally 56 voices telling you that you can't do what you want to do, then try it. Try it. Every episode that I have, you will see an episode just pop up in my feed where it's just me trying something. Jay came on my show. I want to try this. This summer, we tried doing a game show like you were talking about, CJ. We literally got all of these people together, like tons of people, and we played Black Car Revoked, and I was the host. I just wanted to try it. Try it, people. Don't be scared of what might happen. It might work. If it doesn't, at least you know. But stop being limited to what you try because you want to be down with the people who don't even want to be down with you. And with that, I'm out.
All right. Wow, you dropped the mic.
Hell of an exit speech.
Right. So just to kind of summarize, developing content, some people use they use like note apps. Some just make up topics as they come along. So yeah, so I guess there's no set way in developing content. I've tried using a calendar. So just, kind of going back to some of what you guys were talking about, I have like a calendar and it's like, okay, well, for this month, and start putting in topics to see, what I want to talk about that month, and things may get pushed around and things like that. So there really is no way. So I really wanted to get into just the different ways that people can use to develop content. But it seems like consensus is writing it down, getting it,
And also doing it for like how it works for you, because some people can do the Google calendars and some people, like Stephanie, has to get the calendars out. Literally, I need to hold it in my hand and write it down. Some people can do it like just take notes from their notes app. Some people can just do verbal notes. You have to do what's comfortable for you. So to piggyback on what you do for your calendar for the month, I do that for my guests, because sometimes for months I have themes. Like for June, I wanted to only have Black men as my guests, because June is for Black fathers. My mother comes on for Mother's Day, so I don't have to do it for all Black mothers. But it's kind of like I wanted to branch out to more people of color, and that's what I'm doing. And I didn't do June for our queer folks because I'm like, I want to talk to them all during the year. So
gotcha.
It doesn't even matter.
We can definitely come back to that. And Nikita, I know you have to go in a couple minutes, but I just wanted to get you guys' feedback on when setting up your podcast and thinking about seasons. So I know some of you guys have strong feelings against seasons. Some people use them. I'm still like, I don't know what to do with them. So, what do you, or how many episodes should go in a season, or how does that even work? So we'll just kind of go through really quickly. Nikita, we'll start with you because I know you said you got to get the little man to bed.
So here's what I'll say, because I've personally gone back and forth of do me personally for my podcast. So right now I'm on a break. What I would say is 2 things. One, do you. If you want seasons and you want to be as organized as saying this season I'm going to have 12 episodes and then I'm taking a break. Great, do you. For me personally, I just decided when I'm going to take a break. And I probably should have publicized that and told my folks that I was, but I just dropped off the face of the earth. And that's just real talk. So do what works for you. If you feel like you need a break, take a break. If you are, I don't want to say smart enough, but for me, talking to myself, if you're smart enough to know beforehand, hey, probably around this time of the year, I need to take a break and you build that in, even better. But at the end of the day, podcast when you can, take a break when you can. And if that turns into seasons, so be it. If it doesn't, it's your podcast. Your audience will get used to what you do.
Gotcha.
CJ? So yeah, my sentiment is pretty much the same. I have seasons, or at least I call them seasons, but season 1, there's no theme. Season 1, 2, 3, there's no theme at all. But podcasting, especially for me, is a lot of energy. I'm getting guests, I'm finding guests, I'm vetting guests, sitting down, recording, set up the studio to record, editing, publishing, marketing. It's a lot. And so my season is first, second week of February to the second week of December. So from December, January, I pretty much have off. And that's why I call it a season, because it's like I take a break. I get myself pretty much 2 months at the end of the year to kind of reset, decompress, take a deep breath, and kind of because I right now I have different ideas and things I want to do to switch up things, and it'd be kind of awkward to just for me at least, because consistency, it'd be kind of awkward to just switch it up in the middle of the season. Mm-hmm. And it's oh, what happened? But then when it's oh, I'm gone for 2 months, and then I come back, and then I come back in February, it's oh, I got better sound quality and not as cameras, and I would do live feed, and I was oh, okay, well, you took a break to go do something. So that's just my own personal opinion on it.
So thinking about that break, is it a true break, or are you using that time to prep for the next season?
Nah, I don't take break. Well, so me, busybody, I don't stop doing things. But what the break does help me do is I'm right now, I'm kind of fortunate right now because I know I have 2 more episodes to record for the season, then I'm done. And it's October, so yay. But during probably the next 2 weeks, I'll actually take off from the podcast. Once I get everything recorded and edited, I'll probably actually take off and relax. But then after that, it'll be, finding new guests, getting things recorded, so that way I can hit the ground running at the beginning of season 4. And then more than likely have stuff put together and whatnot. So it's not a true break. I'll probably truly break for 2 weeks. But then after that, it's building everything back up.
Gotcha. Stephanie?
So because of the nature of my show, it's I feel like I could make it into seasons, but typically it's not. But during COVID, literally, I had to take a break because mentally I was just drained. And it was okay, because at first I was I'm just going to take a week off, and that week turned into 2 months because mentally I couldn't. I did not have the mental capacity to do it, even though I love talking and I love doing my podcast. It was just kind of it was churning out content just to put content on the timeline is also not healthy for you. And believe me, people can know it's oh, you're just talking because you think we need something. But no. I take the breaks when you can. So if you're someone who doesn't do seasons, and if you're I need to take a break and then take a week off, take a week off. Technically this week, my episode dropped today. I technically took a week off because I just republished an old episode. So it technically is a break on this week. It's just, I didn't record anything new. And so it's I just reissued a new episode, an old episode. And it was just that sometimes you just have to do that. And I was oh, let's have a retro episode because, mentally it was just bad last week, but also it kind of just worked itself out because the episode I re-released fits into what's going on, because I also like to talk about Bravo. So that's another avenue I'm adding into my podcast, and I'm trying to still work out the kinks of how exactly I want to do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that definitely gave me some things to think about. 'Cause like I said, I'm still trying to even work through that whole episode and season format. So thank you guys for that. So I did want to pivot a little bit to the next topic, which is Be My Guest.
Oh.
So the first thing that I wanted you guys' thoughts on is the importance of being a podcast guest? As a podcast host, how important is it to be a guest on someone else's show?
So it helps you to learn how to be in a conversation. Because a lot of times when you're the host, you steer the conversation. There are times where you just need to sit there and enjoy the conversation. And you also can pick up tips from other hosts because that if you're always a student, you'll actually learn, you'll actually grow. But it also helps because I've seen contentious guests. And then if you're a guest on that show, it helps you go, how should I handle if this was on my show? And then you learn some things. You may learn what not to do, but you also may learn what to do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
I think it's important. I think it's important for mostly the exposure aspect of it. So you do learn how to, be a guest yourself and continue having conversations. But one of the problems I've actually been struggling with for a while now is how do I get my podcast to more ears? Mm-hmm. And one thing that I've constantly seen over and over again is be a guest on someone else's podcast. Like just show up on other podcasts. Don't spend the whole time like, oh yeah, this is my podcast. You listen to it on my podcast. But just be yourself. So that way when people listen to you and they're like, man, like I like what he's saying, all that good stuff. And then at the end, you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I have a podcast. You can listen to it on this. So okay, I'm gonna go check it out. You know what I'm saying? So that's why one of the biggest things I've heard is why you should like be guests on other people's podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Nikita?
So I 100% agree with both. And I would just add, in general, when you go on other people's podcasts, it also creates community. You're building the community because you have the interview, but then you have that, what I call the sweet spots, the moments before the interview and more so the moments after the interview where you're like, oh, it was a rough day. Or I did an interview with someone I had met before and it was on StreamYard, but I didn't realize that it was going to be a live broadcast on StreamYard. And so literally I was in my closet because it was just one of those days. And so we did an amazing episode. And at the end, I was like, now, you should have told me that this was about to be live. Mm-hmm. And we developed this friendship and we're still in touch. So if anything else, if you don't think you need to be educated and be a student, which I wholeheartedly think you do, if you don't think that you need to get to more ears because you do, just to know that there's other people out there, and that you all have this camaraderie, you all have something that you all can talk about and relate to and just have someone to talk to. Yes, you can have guests, but being in that other seat and being able to give your feedback and that people ask you questions and you're not trying to run the show all the time, it feels good sometimes. So let me tell you how I feel.
I can just sit and talk. And also, pick back off what Nikita is saying, sometimes it's good to be guests so that you can develop community because on the off chance that, your guest that you lined up all of a sudden like, oh, that's today? Oh, sorry, can't do it. Then you'll have friends who love being on your show and they'll be like, man, anytime you want me to be on the show, just call me. Just let me know when, and I'll be there. So then you can actually, like Derek talks about, having a bank of people that you know that you have good chemistry with, that you know is going to be an enjoyable experience for you and them, so that you're like, oh, okay, I can just ask this person. It's like you can think at least 5 people that off the top of your head that you would definitely be like, oh, I know I can have a good show with this person. That's great.
Yeah, I will say, because I had the opportunity about 2 weeks ago, I think, where I was a guest on someone's show who was a guest on mine. And it's so weird because, I wasn't really nervous talking to this person when I was the host, but when I was the guest, it was like, I'm fumbling with the mic and now it's like, am I sitting up straight? And, so you need to be able to be in that seat so you know what your guests are thinking and you can empathize with them. So maybe that'll help you if they are stuttering. Maybe they're stuttering because they're nervous. So maybe you need to lead them a little bit to get them comfortable with talking. So it was a good experience for me. I do want to do over because I feel like I was super nervous, but yes, I'm from the age of the do-over, so.
Hold on, edit that out. No, I can't. I won't do it. No.
So we had quite a few more topics to talk about, but it seems like we went way over than I was expecting, because I figured by this time we would have gotten through everything. So I don't know if you guys are interested in doing a part 2.
Definitely, let's do the sequel because I know there's more stuff on that list, and there's too much knowledge here.
Yeah, because we didn't get to like the business side of it. We didn't get to monetizing, even the rest of the questions about being a guest. So we'll wrap this up for now. But thank you guys so much. Like I'm so excited. Like you guys gave me so much to think about, and just to even help me kind of go back to the drawing board. Like, remember when she had said, or remember that? just to even think about some things, because for me it's like a lot of times I'll find myself now watching myself, because I have a lot of nervous habit. So even just thinking about things that you don't normally think about after speaking to different people. So thank you guys so much. Called The Show Must Go On.
Quick question.
Yes.
I need to take a bathroom break.
Statement.
Well, you
I have a
bathroom
question.
break.
Statement.
Hobby break.
Huh?
How much longer is this going to run?
That's
Well, I'm trying to get through, so and
She looking at you, Stephanie.
Wait, what? I don't have to go to the bathroom.
Stephanie, you know I was not looking at you, so I don't know why you let
We
me
have this conversation. Yeah, you can go to the bathroom.
you know what I'm saying? I can hold it. If it's another 20, 30 minutes.
No. Go ahead and go to the bathroom, and once we're done recording, I'm going to stop the recording. We'll still be on, and you guys just let me know if you want to keep this in there. Because if not, we can edit it out.
Because honestly, I have basketball practice in 45 minutes. I didn't throw that part in there, but on top of everything else, I coach AAU, so I got to go to basketball practice. That's all I'm asking how much longer.
We do have a couple more topics, so if we can keep our answers as succinct as possible, we can get through as much as we can.
Well, I can hold it.
No. Please, go
fleek ass makeup having Stephanie.
I don't want the question to change if you realize you can't make it.
Camera ready.
I can't help it if you laid today to the God.
All right, well, I'll be back.
Okay.
Oh my God, he's gotta forget this. This is not gonna work. We were trying to give him time. We could have been laughing and kicking this whole time, and he could have went to the bathroom and came on back.
Listen,
you and God, you over here on stuff that we gotta do.
I didn't want to tell him to hold it, and then he was and his eyes start holding out.
All bathroom breaks are quicker than ours. I'm just saying. That's not. I'm just saying. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying.
And I'm not hearing, but I'm just hearing. So I got you.
What was the name of the editing software you were talking about again? I literally am taking notes.
Descript. So if you look in the private chat on the right side, I put it there.
Oh, okay, I see it.
And then the other link is the link to the 4 editing platforms, the comparison between those.
Ooh, Canva. Ooh, I like Canva. No, I forgot that one.
Oh yeah, I love Canva.
I love
That would have been a good one too. Yeah.
It's super cute for graphics for Instagram and Facebook, or that's how some people have made their podcast art.
I've made a couple clients
Canva.
art in Canva.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
See
back.
how quick that was,
Leave the eyes a lot more droopy now. Like, all right, I'm good. I'm good.
If you would have took bets, definitely, if you would have took bets, you would have won, because that definitely was a quick bathroom break.
Take a leak. Jeez.
Can I vote to keep it in because this is funny?